Welcome to the Movement Leader Podcast, growing together as leaders.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Movement Leadership Podcast, where we are growing together as leaders. And so each week we're taking a topic or something that we think is relevant to you guys as leaders and breaking it down. So last episode we talked about what it looks like to do middle school ministry specifically. And today we're going to talk about high school ministry. So we have two of our high school leaders with us, Mr. Joe Elford, or Mr. Elford to some of you, and Mick Harper. Welcome guys. Thanks for being here. Yeah. So Joe, tell me a little bit about yourself, and more specifically, tell me what you were like in high school.
Oh boy. So high school me, I would say lack of motivation was a common theme. I settled for B's and C's academically. Probably could have done better, but didn't really push myself too hard. Probably made my identity more on athletics more than academics. Probably a little bit of a weird kid too.
And what do you do now?
Now I'm a teacher at Fairfield Union, going on year 10 of teaching high school chemistry. So it's been a lot of fun.
Cool. We'll come back to your experience as a teacher as we dig into this. Mick, what were you like as a high schooler?
That's a good question. I think my perspective of who I was probably not who I was. I thought I was pretty cool.
Yeah.
No, that was I think that was my fifth school growing up. So I had transferred a lot, and so it was really trying to figure out who I was. It was the first time being in a smaller school, so I switched from going public school to private school. So we went from 400 or 500 kids in my class to down to like a dozen, and so feeling. I think that changed maybe a little bit of who I thought I was like in the larger crowd. And I'm sure we'll get into some of this as we talk about some stuff later, but really just trying to figure out who I was as a person. Yeah. And I think that actually probably helped me more than anything, because transferring from the large where I was just following part of the crowd, it kind of, I think, started to shape and then who I was. But similar to Joe, like my effort didn't probably match my ability both academically and athletically. I would just do what I needed to do to be as good as I thought I needed to be.
Yeah. And so you have experience with high schoolers, both leading a group, but also raising some teenagers, two teenage boys.
Yeah.
So we'll talk a little bit more about your experience as a parent as well. So two of the things that I heard from you guys was identity and where you belong, where you fit in. And those are some of the things, some of the challenges that we'll talk about in this episode, and how we can best lead high schoolers through those things in high school. So understanding high schoolers. High schoolers are asking, who am I and what do I believe? So they're moving into more abstract thinking. A lot of middle schoolers are more black and white, and so now their brain is starting to shift into that abstract thinking. And so they're becoming more complex, both emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. And so they're asking these big questions like, who am I? Where do I fit in? What is my identity? So, Joe, as a teacher, what has been the biggest shift as you see students go from 8th grade into their 9th grade, into their high school years? What are some of those shifts that you've seen in them?
So, coming from 8th grade, you're kind of the top dog in the school. So you move into your freshman year, and now you're kind of back at the bottom of the pecking order, and that social hierarchy, so to speak, and just trying to kind of find your place as you go. We always, kind of joke about the first couple of days of school. You can tell when there's a freshman walking the halls because they look overly lost.
Yeah.
So, a lot of trying to find their way. A lot of them view it as a fresh start. They have this reputation, so to speak, coming from 8th grade into their freshman year. And the freshman year is kind of a fresh start with, you've got new kids in the building, you've got new teachers that you haven't interacted with. So I think that's something that I've seen a lot of kids really kind of lean into, is like, okay, I'm going to leave some of that stuff at the middle school and kind of change my identity a little bit here at the high school level.
Yeah. Mick, as a parent, raising your boys, what did you see shift from middle school to high school and them at home?
I think figuring out who they were as individuals was a big thing. Again, they go to private school, so the shift for them probably isn't as dramatic as maybe what Joe sees on an everyday basis, because they're switching buildings and everything else. For my boys, it was going upstairs, so it wasn't as big of a shift. But I think what I saw as a parent is that they became more reliant on other people other than their parents. So as far as even advice, things that they would share, as they were trying to figure out who they were, I think that they became more reliant. Like I was finding out things from youth leaders that they would tell me about my boys, and both things that I'm proud of. Well, mainly things that I'm proud of, but they would tell me like things that they did at school or things that they did out in their community. I'm like, I had no idea. Like
Yeah.
we didn't talk about that. But they became reliant on that as they were trying to figure out really who they were as young men.
Yeah, moving into that independent stage too,
Yeah.
where they're less reliant on their parents. It's a weird tension, I think, during those high school years of like wanting to be an individual and wanting to be independent, but also still needing your parents, still needing all this input from around them. And I think that plays into faith too. Like they're moving into that mode of like, I think a little bit in middle school, they're starting to own their faith, but especially high school, they want to make it their own. And so there's a critical part that happens for us as leaders. Joe, how have you seen high schoolers process their faith? Like, I know you've had a lot of questions with, or a lot of discussion with, especially students that go to Fairfield Union, that come to movements. What have you seen as they've been processing their faith in high school?
There's a lot of external pressures being a high school student, especially in a public school. So, you have kids that are getting involved in things for the first time that they probably shouldn't be. And so you have some of those kids who their friends are getting involved. And I think that, that kind of leads to a little bit of a distraction with their faith. They're getting to an age where, church may be more of a choice for them and no longer mom and dad said we have to go. So they're starting to wrestle with some of those freedoms that come with that, and seeing what their friends are getting involved in really does test some of that.
Yeah. Mick, what have you seen from your boys and even the group that you lead as they start to head into out of middle school into those upper high school years? What have you seen kind of their questions shifting?
Yeah, I think that it kind of gets to that like critical point, maybe even what like Joe was talking about, where it transitions from it's no longer a pressure from maybe parents or wherever that pressure came from, but it becomes a choice for them then to figure out what they're going to do with their faith, how they're going to use it. I see kind of in the boys that I'm with, this will now be going into my third year with the same group of guys, and you see the highs and lows in their spiritual journey. It just feels like sometimes you get them in small groups, and you ask them very, very pointed questions, and you get very direct answers. I know one time I ask them about devos, about their personal life, and somebody's like, "No, I don't struggle with it. Why would anybody struggle with it? If you love God, why would you struggle with that?" And then I have, on the other hand, I've got people that are sitting there and they're like, "Yeah, I struggle with it every day, but I still love Jesus. How's that working out?" So because you have two completely different opinions, but it feels like they're just sorting through like what is it that I believe? Why is it that I believe that? And so they end up with these highs and lows because sometimes they can even get discouraged in their faith because of that. They're like, well, this guy is saying that if I love Jesus, I should be doing my devos all the time just because I love him. Yeah. And so why am I struggling? Is it that I don't love Jesus? And so you get that with my boys. I felt like it was really a time of solidifying their faith. Mm-hmm. So they had been kind of under our care. We've brought them to church every time we were at church. Yeah. And that's just been a rhythm of our house. Never has there ever been really an option, even when they were kids, other than if they're sick. We never gave them that choice. Like, do you want to go to church? Do you not want to go to church? They just knew the expectation was the same as school, and so they showed up. And so going into high school, like I said, a lot of it was the mentoring and the leadership behind really what happened at Movement. That really let us know how solid they were in their faith. Also, we would, because we're a pretty transparent family, your phone is our phone kind of thing, and we would see these conversations back and forth with their friends or with their girlfriends of like, hey, how's your Devo life going? How's your walk with God going? And so for me, it was a huge encouragement with my boys. And it also was like coaching points too, as I saw them struggling at times. Say, you know what, this is why we do these things. It's okay that you struggle. So But for them, I think really figuring out who they were in their relationship with God was very critical going into the high school.
Yeah, and you and Molly have been very intentional about how you parent in that of
Mhm.
like encouraging them to own it and to like make it their own.
Mhm.
The reality is not every student does have that kind of home structure. Joe, what are some of the common challenges that you've seen students battling both spiritually, academically, socially within the high school, not even just speaking from a Christian perspective?
So I think one of the things, and you kind of alluded to it when you said that not every student has that strong like parental figure at home that's going to kind of steward them towards the right things. There are kids out there that they don't have positive adult influences in their life. So I think that makes what we do here on Sundays of the utmost importance, and there is a weightiness to it where we could be the only positive interaction that some of these kids have with adults. I carry that into the classroom as well. There are so many kids that walk the halls that they don't have positive parental figures, let alone positive male parental figures. So, as male leaders, that's also something else that we're kind of carrying is, we're kind of guiding these kids as a parental figure as well that they may not have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even parents with the best intentions can put unnecessary pressure on their kids too. So they want them to succeed in sports. So they're always on the field practicing. They want them to succeed in their academics. So they're always pressuring them to get the grade. Mick, how have you balanced wanting your kids to succeed, but also being able to let them be kids?
Yeah. Um, like I kind of mentioned before, I think that youth was played a huge role in it. So my boys growing up, I coached a lot of their sports, but it come to a point that I was like, you know what? It's not that I've coached them as far as I could coach them, but I've coached them as far as I can be effective. They no longer now it's just advice. It's just pressure from dad, and it's no longer just somebody else pouring into their life. It's just pressure from dad. And I think that that's what really, like I said, they really solidified their faith in their high school years. Not that they didn't have it before, but I think that they really found their identity in Christ. Both of them are leaps and bounds above where I was at that point, and I even say maybe even where I'm at currently. Both of my boys have done great, but I don't discount the fact of their adult leaders pouring into them, just like a coach would out on the field, like doing the things that as a parent they're filling in that gap, and not only are they filling the gap, but they're giving them advice from a whole nother perspective. Not just a loving parent that doesn't want their kids to do one thing or another or is pressuring them in the same direction, but it's outside influence that's now saying these are the reasons why I walk out my faith, and these are some things that you can do with your faith. And I think that outside influence has really taken them to the next level, and has really even in our family boosted our overall family's faith. So
100%. Yeah. And you think about the advent of social media and all that entails with students who are hearing so many different voices into their life. I think middle school social media can be more entertainment, but I think high school especially, it starts to come into this character forming aspect where they're hearing spiritual advice from people that might not be biblical. They're hearing spiritual advice from other avenues. And so like there are all these voices speaking into their lives. And so for us as adult leaders, like we have to be, like you said, another voice that is speaking truth into their lives. Also, I think they're being exposed to a lot more adult issues as kids. Mental health is a huge one. Deconstruction, so people challenging their faith, and a lot of students questioning whether they actually believe, and deconstructing to an unhealthy level. Family pain, we do see a lot of broken homes, a lot of divorce happening in families. And so as you've seen your students battle these kinds of things, what are some ways practically that you've stepped in and walked alongside them in that?
I think the big thing is them knowing they're not alone in any of this. They've got kind of an incredible support system here at Movement. All of the adult leaders that show up week in and week out and pour into these kids. We're here for those kids, and I think that a lot of adult leaders have plenty of stories of, oh, this kid was walking through this, and just to kind of be there with them. I had the privilege of speaking at baccalaureate, and one of the things that I talked about was there's just something so powerful, like as a teacher, to be able to pray over these students and pray with them alongside them. Not just that, but then to see them through the week and have that follow up on Wednesday of, hey, how are things going? Like, do you need anything? I think that just the consistent like conversation and presence is, it makes a big difference that I think sometimes we don't realize the impact that we truly do have.
Yeah. Yeah. Showing that genuine care. And I think, like you said, follow up is a huge part of that, where you're not just asking them how they're doing, how can you pray for them, but you're actually following up. Like, how did that test go? How did that conversation with your parents go? That's huge.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, because like you said, it's easy to, in that moment, have that conversation. But when you go back a couple of days later to follow up, that does show, oh, there really is an investment here.
Yeah, Mr. Alfred actually cares. Love that. Mick, how have you navigated these conversations, not with just your boys, but with your small group?
Yeah. I think as far as youth leader, just the power of presence. So when you first asked me about being a youth leader, one, I was like, I don't know that I'm cool enough. Like, I want the kids to think I'm cool.
Sure.
And I think that one thing that can be discounted, or maybe that would give somebody some apprehension, is that same thought. Like, are the kids gonna think I'm relevant? Are the kids gonna think I'm cool? But I don't think that that's even what they're looking for remotely. I think they're just looking for somebody that's a present and a constant in their life. And I think along with that is showing some level of consistency. So not only just showing up every week and being what you signed up for, making sure you're there every week for your group, but the same thing, like Joe said, following up with them, making sure you're praying for them, showing up for sporting events. Take it, we have a group that we take out to Canes on a pretty regular basis, especially through the school year, and just having that purpose time where sometimes a Canes visit can turn into an hour standing out in the parking lot chatting afterwards about an issue that a kid's having, or something good even that's going on in their life. But just having that constant, somebody that cares for them, somebody that's loving them, somebody that's really just mimicking in some way Jesus' love to them is I think a huge thing in their life.
Yeah, that's awesome. I also think coming into your groups with a non-judgmental attitude, where a kid can feel safe enough to ask any question, where they're not going to be looked down upon. And I think it is a balance too. Like, we don't just want a student to stay where they're at, right? Like, we want them to take the next step towards seeking out the truth and in their discipleship, following Jesus. And so I think for us as leaders too, to be challenged to, I heard a pastor say once, like, Jesus loves you no matter what, but he loves you too much to leave you there. And so, like, what is that next step? And I was like seeking out, okay, how do we help that student take that next step, no matter what's. Another thing they need is authenticity, that they need to know that we are real people, that we don't have it all together. Joe, how have you seen like your story, your faith story, play into how you lead students at Movement?
So my faith story, a big part of it is the students. I was actually challenged by a recent graduate to even step into Movement, and I think that one, I kind of like Mick alluded to, I'm like, I don't think that's for me. That might be for someone else, not me. But even more than that, I think, sharing our struggles as well. It's easy to, it's easy to have those conversations about these are the things that we need to be doing, to be good followers of Jesus. But, when you look back, are you following your advice as well? I'd like to share a message with the kids that well done is better than well said. So it's easy to say all of these things, but are we doing them ourselves? Letting them know that we're not perfect either. Sharing some of our brokenness, our struggles, kind of breaks those walls down and makes that relationship even have some more depth than just surface level. This is the things you should be doing.
Yeah. And as you think about these students who are really forming their identity during these high school years and wanting that independence, Mick, how have you encouraged your students to own the ministry, own the calling that God has on their lives? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I've probably, I've got a little bit more unique group of boys. And so we've been really just trying to walk through that, and they were really all boys that were, and maybe all of them are this way, and my group is not unique, but felt like they were really trying to search out who they were. We actually have a large group of homeschool boys in our group, and so for some of them that was the first time away from their parents in any type of corporate setting, where they're in with their peers. Their mom and dad aren't there anymore, and so it was really just we had a lot of them that were hunting for who they were as individuals, but even more than that, I think who they were in Christ. And so we've been, I really try to make a balance. I try to let them know that it's a joy serving Jesus. You can have fun in that. You can, but even more so, like the community aspect of it is something that I've tried to drive home with them, the importance, because their influence is not that big. Like I'm like, well, you should invite your friends to church. They're like, all of my friends are in church. These are my friends. I was like, all right, I
awesome.
got you. I understand. But trying to even like branch out from there, like who are your circles of influence? It is bigger than here. So even letting them know like the power of the community that they serve in, and trying to draw others in. We don't have a lot of student leaders in our group. And so that's been a little bit of interesting dynamic, and trying to encourage them. I think right now the group of seniors that are coming in, I mean, that's a solid of a group of boys, and it's a huge group. So I'm watching a lot of our guys start to mimic and starting to look at them and going, man, their faith is solid. And so trying to even encourage them in that way, like, hey, that's going to be you next year. Next year, you're going to be the ones that have to carry that, and try to even like get them even more bought in that way. Like there's going to become a point that you're no longer the freshman that can just kind of ride along and through movement, but now you're going to have to take responsibility for those under you, because they're watching you the same way that you used to watch 100%. Those other guys.
Yeah.
So.
And what a powerful thing to like show our students that the God of the universe wants to use them to expand his kingdom, and he's gifted them and, equip them to do that. I think for us, it's just speaking those truths into their lives, calling out what we see in them, that they do have what it takes, that they are able to do that, no matter if they're homeschooled or not. Like they do have influence, like you said, and they can make that difference. And I think there's probably a difference, and Joe, you might have seen it, of students who do have that kind of community like we have here, that graduate and go on. Like, have you seen a difference or what difference have you seen with those who have a strong spiritual foundation after high school as they graduate versus those who don't?
So as far as that goes, it's been only the last couple years that I've kind of really like noticed the group that, is here at Movement, versus those who weren't. Like I said, I'm going into year 9 at Fairfield Union, and we just graduated the second class that I've been involved with at Movement. So we're still kind of like in the infancy with that. But just watching the way some of those kids conduct themselves in the building, and outside is, it's incredible to watch. There's a group that meets every Tuesday morning. And there's some mornings I've texted you, we've had up to 35 kids that are there to hear a word of the gospel and just kind of fellowship together. So I think that those roots are going to continue from what they have in high school, and emphasize the community, not just here on Sundays, but also throughout the week and in their schools.
Yeah. And they get to see you walk with purpose too, and like have that calling on your life, and you get to model that for them. Mick, you talked about as you stepped into leading at youth, like you had that little insecurity about not being cool enough. What would you say to a leader who's sitting across from you and they're like, man, I don't think I have what it takes to be an influence in a teenager's life?
Yeah. I've actually had this conversation with a few people, and I just tell them basically what I told you guys earlier. Like the kids aren't looking for cool. They're looking for authenticity. There we go. And they're just looking for somebody to be present in their life. So you don't have to come in and try to be the hype man and try to dress wearing dunks or whatever anybody else is wearing.
You can.
You can,
yeah,
and they look good on you, Micah. But but you just have to be yourself.
Yeah.
Be authentic, be real. And then in those times of small groups, like I tell them, I was like, that's one of the most powerful times that you have, and you're the way you come at them might be a little bit different. Joe's got a little bit different influence. He probably knows the lingo better. He gets
Yeah.
to see the high schoolers every day in their world. And then you've got people that are probably at the older end of the spectrum that are in as youth leaders right now, but both of them have influence and both of them are just as powerful. They're just bringing in a different perspective to it. So I would say don't discount your perspective. All of us have different backgrounds. All of us have different skills, different abilities, different things that we, different people that we're going to connect with. And I think taking that away, saying, well, I don't think that I'll fit in enough, or I don't think that I'm cool enough, or I'm not talkative enough, or I'm not, whatever that may be that you want to fill in. There is a group of teenagers here that are looking for that person. And so by you disqualifying yourself, if God's calling you into it, is really shortchanging all of those kids that you could be influencing.
Well said, man. I really want a time where Joe just teaches us all the lingo.
I know.
That'd be really
Yeah,
cool.
well, we can do this.
That's another podcast.
Yeah, another podcast. We'll
Sweet.
do some
We'll plan it
lingo.
out. Yeah. So in conclusion, leaders, you play an incredible role in these students' lives. The high school years are wild. They're crazy. Students are making big decisions about their identity and their calling and what they're called to. And so your role in showing up for them, like Mick and Joe talked about, is critical. It's a hinge point in their faith, and it's going to form a lot of what their adult life is looking like. And so we are so thankful that you have invested your time and your energy into these high schoolers. We're thankful for you, Joe and Mick. And we hope that this episode has been encouraging to you, but also challenging, that you get to step into a critical time in a student's life and lead them to see their calling and to see their purpose. So until next time, thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode.